Good evening, everybody. What a spectacular night, a spectacular place to be for all of us to enjoy in our wonderful community. I want to welcome everybody to the War Memorial, especially our servicemen and women, particularly those from World War II. Over here, all of them deserve a hand. Thank you. My name is Louis Theros. I am lucky to be mayor of Grosse Pointe Farms, where you are all today. I'm going to digress from my notes here just for a minute to be the master of ceremonies, to say that this community, I've always said, everybody deserves nice things. And this is a nice, wonderful thing. The Alger addition, thank you, Fred and Veronica, for a beautiful addition to the Alger house. This sculpture that we're dedicating today and all the community activities that go on in this building. Thank you, Charles, for your vision, and Maria for taking it forward. Let's give them a hand. Thank you so much. We look forward to many more things coming from the War Memorial. This sculpture, Le Brave II at Water's Edge, is significant because there's only 2 of these sculptures in the world. And we are fortunate to have one of those 2 here. It is modeled after the original Le Brave in Normandy, France. The original sculpture was created to commemorate the 60th anniversary of D-Day in 2004 as a tribute to the Western Allies that landed on Omaha Beach on June 6, 1944. If you have never been to Normandy, we were lucky to go 5 years ago. Movies, pictures, stories really cannot capture what our brave soldiers had to endure on those days invading that beach. Hundreds of yards of sand to even make it to the cliffs. If you have not had the chance to go and somehow have the opportunity, please do, because it really was one of the most moving times in my life. Of course, I'd like to welcome the United States Army Herald Trumpets, who are up on the balcony, who just welcomed us with a great fanfare. They are the official ensemble of the President of the United States and were founded in 1959. They will play a few fanfares at the end of the program as well, so please remain seated as we end the program. Those of you who have attended my city council meetings know I run a tight ship and a tight meeting, so we're going to try to do that as well here tonight so everybody can enjoy the festivities. But right now, I ask you to turn off your cell phones, please. Make sure your ringer's on, and please stand for the national anthem. Now I'd like to introduce Maria Miller, Interim President and CEO of the War Memorial. Maria's been in this position since February, prior to joining the War Memorial. In March 22, she served as the Chief Financial Officer of the War Memorial. And prior to that, she was a financial leader in the nonprofit sector, recently as Vice President of Finance for what we all know in Grosse Pointe as Bon Secours, Beaumont, now Corwell. So with that, Maria.
Thank you, Mayor Theros. And thank you all for joining us today for this monumental dedication. A special thank you to our partners, especially the Grosse Pointe Garden Center. It's inclusive of the Trial Gardens and the Veterans Gardens. Founded in 1950, they are an industrious volunteer group that help make this corner of the yard over there bloom with beauty. Please enjoy the gardens when you get a chance. The architects and contractors involved with the installation of Le Brave II were also a part of the beautiful design of the build of the Fred M. Elger Center. I'd like to acknowledge our architects, Rossetti. A shout out to Matt and your team. I know Matt's not here, but the Rossetti team, some of you are. To our contractors, Frank Rewald and Sons, and their boots on the ground, project superintendent, Bill Heidinger. There were numerous subcontractors involved in all the earthwork and such behind me, such as Albaugh Masonry, Albinelli Cement, Landscape Services, and so many more. From the start of this installation, these folks had a sense of pride and honor for this project. We knew the handling of this sculpture was in good hands. Words cannot adequately express enough about this next couple. Mary and Ron Lamparter have been a part of the War Memorial family for decades. Mary is our current board secretary, and Ron has served in past years. They have been a part of this specific journey, getting a piece of Normandy to our shores here in Michigan since the beginning. And without their support and encouragement, the vision of the War Memorial as a home for Le Brave II at Water's Edge would not have been possible. Through the generosity and support of the Lamparter family, we also feel emboldened to continue our mission to be a patriotic, cultural, and community leader. I would like to recognize dignitaries and officials here with us for today's exciting dedication. U.S. Representative from Michigan's 1st Congressional District, serving on the House Armed Service Committee and Veterans Affairs Committee, retired Marine Corps Lieutenant General Jack Bergman. Michigan Speaker of the House from the 10th District, member of the Joint Committee on Administrative Rules, and U.S. Army Marine Corps veteran Joe Tate. I saw you. There you are. Army Major General, Commanding General of the U.S. Army TACOM, Darren Werner. Community Director for U.S. Representative John James, Lisa Brown, and Regional Representative for Senator Gary Peters, Michael Schmid. And now to recognize our veterans and service people here today, please welcome up Representative Jack Bergman.
Good evening, everyone. Does it get any better than this in Michigan this time of year? And this is not just about the weather. I'm headed to the UP tomorrow. We only have a 30% chance of snow. But I haven't put my snowmobiles away yet. Words usually don't escape politicians, much to our chagrin. But I'd like to tell you how I started my day this morning at the Vietnam Memorial in Washington, D.C., with a group of about 40 of my colleagues, all members of the House of Representatives, who served in uniform. And what we did was we washed the Vietnam Wall to start today. There will be some media on that, and that's the good news. Unfortunately, we don't see enough of the good media of the kind of things that are done every day by Democrats and Republicans working together all day, every day to represent the American people. But I was asked to speak there to my colleagues because there were only 3 of us in Congress left who are Vietnam veterans: Mike Thompson, California; Jim Baird, Indiana; and me. And we all were asked by our colleagues to share our stories. The wall is a very somber place for all of us, not only individually, but collectively. But it is gaining understanding that makes that design and that implementation and the creation of the wall what it needs to be for our country. And it's not this country, it's our country. Just the same as I look behind me here, the creation of the sculpture is healing. It's understanding, it's bringing together, and that's who we are as a country. I've been proud to serve in the military. I was in uniform for 40 years, kind of a hybrid career. If any of you flew on Northwest Airlines in the 80s and 90s, I could have been your pilot. I never personally lost any of your luggage, but the point is I could have taken you from A to B safely, and that's what we all try to do in D.C. in our elected positions today. But the point is, you know, all of the veterans in the crowd here, if you're a veteran, stand up. Stand up. I'm going to thank you in a different way because you all here, thank you for your service. Thank you for our freedom. And our grandfathers and grandmothers, in a lot of cases, who fought for that right in World War II, guaranteed us the ability to be able to stand here today to do this. Is Michael Schmidt, are you here? Are we doing, now this is where it gets a little ad hoc, ad lib, are we giving certificates? Come on up here, Michael. He's representing Senator Peters, who's a great colleague in Washington, D.C., and there is no truth to the rumor that the Senate takes naps every day. There's no truth to that, but they do have private time. I'm not sure what they do. So anyway, the point is, what I would like to call out, who I would like to call out here, are our World War II veterans who are here with us this evening. And I think rather than make you walk up here, when you stand, would you go over and just give them their, you think that would work? All right. Our first, U.S. Navy Seaman Clifford Elvera. By the way, bipartisanship is not a bad word. It's a good word. Okay, U.S. Army Air Corps Corporal Gene Gilbert. U.S. Navy Petty Officer, 3rd Class, George Guittari. And by the way, if you get a chance to meet George tonight, get a picture with him because he is absolutely the best dressed individual here tonight. Okay? And finally, U.S. Army Corporal Robert Hafner. Ladies and gentlemen, there's a lot of things on the program that will follow. Enjoy this evening that we are so blessed to be able to celebrate the service, the commitment, but the honor that goes before it to make it all happen. And we are here by God's blessing. Thank you.
Our next speaker is an extremely dedicated soul, caring for her patients with compassion and grace. She's not only an incredible physician, she is our illustrious board chair. Please welcome Dr. Donna Hoban.
I will be very brief, but I thought it was important. So many great things have happened here at the War Memorial, and often our board of directors that you will see here in the first couple of rows, three rows, don't get enough credit. I am so proud to represent these individuals who are all volunteers for the good of this community and for your good and for the good of the War Memorial. So I think they all deserve a round of applause. Also, many people have thanked Fred Alger, and I'm not sure where Fred and Veronica are. Okay. And of course, if you got a chance to go into the ballroom, it's just fabulous. So thank you to Fred and Veronica. But also, there's someone else that we need to thank, and who brought us the brave. And years ago, Charles Burke, who's here somewhere, oh, right in the front row. Charles and his family took a trip to Omaha Beach, and they were so struck by the original Le Brave that I know Charles worked hard to find who the sculptor was. That's how taken he was by that sculptor, by the things that it just was so heartwarming to him. And he worked very hard, and he worked with all of us to make certain that this happened. And without Charles, I don't think it would have happened. So though Charles isn't here any longer, he certainly deserves a round of applause for bringing this to us. Thank you, Charles. And that's it for me.
Thank you, Dr. Hoban. Our next speaker is Professor Greg Jackson. He is an associate professor and senior fellow at the Center for National Security Studies and a fellow of integrated studies at Utah Valley University. Best known as a creator, host, and writer of U.S. history podcast, History That Doesn't Suck. He also has appearances on the History Channel in documentaries, other podcasts, radio, and was a historical consultant for the podcast American Elections, Wicked Game. He is a Burton Scholar and earned a PhD in history from the University of Utah. He also earned a master's degree in French studies, very apropos, and bachelor's degree in history from Brigham Young University. With that, let us give a warm welcome to Professor Jackson.
I am deeply impressed that the War Memorial has reached out to my home university and figured out how my classes start. Thank you so much. Ladies and gentlemen, I am honored to be with you today to celebrate the installation of Madame Anilore Banon's magnificent work, Les Braves. My mind goes two ways at once as I look at this impressive sculpture. On the one hand, I see it as a historian. I contemplate the sacrifices of June 6, 1944, while also reflecting on France and the United States' special centuries-long brotherhood, their fraternité, if you'll pardon my French. But on the other hand, when I look into Les Braves' shimmering metallic wings, I find my academic self melts away, and a ghostly reflection looks back at me. It's not my own. In my mind's eye, the silhouette is that of my own uniformed grandfathers. If you'll indulge me then, I'd like to share both of these trains of thought, that of a historian and that of a grandson. First, the history. France and the United States share a truly unique bond. In a time when monarchs ruled. It was the French philosophes, more than any other group, who questioned the nature of government. It's hard not to wonder, where would the United States be today if Baron de Montesquieu had not promoted the idea of three distinct branches of government, of the legislative, executive, and judiciary? And when those daring colonials not only added a few ideas of their own, but took up muskets against their sovereign, France was here. 19-year-old Marquis de Lafayette came in 1777. He became a son of sorts to George Washington, a crucial member of his military family. Meanwhile, Louis XVI may not have shared our sentiments on monarchy, but his government allied with the colonies in 1778. General Lafayette literally bled for us when a musket ball tore through his cap at Brandywine, while the forces he led played a crucial role in laying the groundwork for the Revolution's decisive battle at Yorktown in 1781. And who fought at Yorktown? Plenty of Americans, but even more numerous were the French. Without them, the American Revolution might have been a very different story. In 1789, France began its own revolution, caused in part by the financial distress of debt taken to support the American Revolution. You're welcome, France. The same year, French revolutionaries stormed a detested royal prison, the Bastille. In the large scheme of things, it was a small event, but in the hearts of the French people, its symbolism was unparalleled. And what did our dear friend Lafayette do afterward? He sent a key across the Atlantic to his semi-adoptive father, George Washington. George treasured the gift. The key is still encased and hanging on a wall inside his home, Mount Vernon, to this day. Meanwhile, a new generation of Americans continued to treasure Lafayette. He received a hero's welcome while visiting the United States in the 1820s. But liberty's flame was struggling to stay lit in France by this point. The French Revolution's call for liberty, equality, and brotherhood had suffered setbacks. From 1789 through the latter half of the 19th century, French regimes came and went in a statewide tug-of-war for the nation's soul. Would this be a land of liberty, protected by a republic, or a theology-imposing monarchy? France flipped back and forth from republic to Napoleonic Empire to various monarchies, then back to republic until, by the 1860s, another empire had risen under yet another Bonaparte, the famous Napoleon's nephew, Napoleon III. Ardent Republicans remained in France or lived in exile, like this guy named Victor Hugo. But through these uncertain decades, some French wondered, did that republic across the ocean still see France as its friend? Does America's memory and love of France and Lafayette live on? In the summer of 1865, a group of republic-loving Frenchmen pondered this very question over cigars, that's the way to do it, at the home of Monsieur Edouard René de la Boulaye. I will not say that 10 times fast. One gentleman said no. He insisted that nations cannot feel gratitude. But Edouard disagreed. With the portraits of Thomas Jefferson and Benjamin Franklin hanging on his walls, our host countered, and I'll quote him. America has more sympathy for France than any other European nation. This sentiment is based upon the remembrance of the community of thoughts and of struggles sustained with common aspirations. The Frenchmen who fought in the United States spilled their blood for the principles that they hoped to see prevail in France and in the world. There is then, in that struggle for independence, not a simple service rendered to a friendly nation, but a fraternity of feelings, a community of efforts and of emotions. And when hearts have beaten together, something always remains among nations as among individuals. One man present, our only source for this meeting, alas, so we'll just hope we can trust him, was a sculptor named Frédéric Auguste Bartholdi. He later credited this day as the genesis of his Colossus gift to the United States, a testament to the special blood-soaked Franco-American bond made in the name of liberty still standing today. You might be familiar with it. We call it the Statue of Liberty. And by the time of her installation in New York Harbor in 1886, Lady Liberty's flame burned a bit brighter in both nations. The post-Civil War United States had abandoned slavery, and France had ended its identity crisis with the establishment of a long-lasting Third Republic. Several more decades passed, Between secret treaties and rising militarism, nationalism, imperialism, let's just cut to the chase, a lot of isms, Europe careened into war. The far more numerous Germans spilled onto French soil. Parisian taxi drivers shuttled troops, and a deadly trench system soon stretched across France, from the English Channel to the Swiss border. Humanity had never seen such horrors as this Great War. And more than once, the French people had to dig deep as their blue-clad infantry, those scruffy poilus, died in droves at Verdun and elsewhere. All nations in this awful war suffered, but by 1917, France was literally running out of men to sacrifice to the god of war. Then the doughboys arrived. On July 4th, 1917, men of the US 1st Division, the Big Red One, paraded through Paris. Well, parade is a strong word for recruits so fresh that some had yet to fire a gun, but the French forgave the lack of cadence and followed as the Americans made their way through the capital to an old graveyard, to the tomb of Lafayette. Not a man of words, but aware that something should be said to the troops and the French crowd, General Blackjack Pershing turned to Lieutenant Colonel Charles E. Stanton. The young officer said a number of thoughtful things, but nothing was more memorable than when he turned to the tomb of America's French founding father and proclaimed, "Lafayette, nous sommes ici. Lafayette, we are here." 150 years since the revolution, and again. The colonel reaffirmed the truth of Édouard René de Laboulaye's assertion that America and France share a special bond, born of blood, shed for the shared principles of liberty. And now that bond would deepen further as, once again, they bled together. The Great War was truly worthy of its awful title. Death, injury, destruction. No war in history had been greater. Sadly, and I say this with no disrespect to Allied leaders like the Welsh wizard David Lloyd George, Georges the Tiger Clemenceau, or our own Woodrow Wilson, but it wasn't put to bed right. The Versailles Treaty invited another round to come, and come it did. In 1939, a Second World War broke out. Incredibly and terribly, this war's casualties also counted by the tens of millions, but further accompanied by a Holocaust, soon dwarfed the staggering losses of the Great War. Under Hitler's Nazi regime, more populous Germans spent years secretly preparing to seek vengeance for the last war's conclusion, and more, to conquer the continent. While some today like to crack jokes about France's poor showing in 1940, the truth is that under the circumstances, the Third Republic's ability to stand against the well-oiled Nazi machine, even for 6 weeks, was impressive. But yes, that was it. Spitefully, Hitler then forced French leadership to accept a harsh armistice in the exact same train car in which Germany was forced to accept its humiliation and defeat 2 decades prior. Meanwhile, his blitzkrieging troops unfurled a massive Nazi flag from atop the Eiffel Tower. Occupied in the north, operated by a puppet collaborating regime in the south, the French Republic had fallen, but not the French people. On June 18th, 1940, General Charles de Gaulle sent a broadcast with the help of the BBC from London across the English Channel to his beloved France. He assured his fellow citoyens that the last word had not been said, that defeat was not final, and called on all French soldiers who could to join him in London, where they would prepare to reclaim their homeland. And what proof did he offer that this was even possible? International friendship. He bellowed into his microphone, "France is not alone. She is not alone." And among those friends whom the mustachioed general named was the United States. France's friends came indeed. On June 6th, 1944, some 160,000 Allied troops splashed out of transports and into machine gun fire as they stormed the shores of Normandy Beach. Nearly half of those forces were American. And it didn't take more than a day for Colonel Stanton's 1917 proclamation to reappear with one additional word in American newspapers: Lafayette, We are here again. Once more, the Franco-American bond was sealed in blood, largely the blood of more than 9,000 young Americans who remain at Normandy to this day, now interred under a sea of white crosses and the occasional Star of David. The history of France and America's more than 2 centuries of fraternité, of brotherhood, is important. For all their faults, these nations, both of which I love, have strived, I believe, and continue to strive to become more perfect republics. And at times, as we've seen, they've done it together. But now, I'll get just a touch personal. I don't know that I ever would have cared enough to learn this history and become a historian if I didn't grow up knowing what my grandfather sacrificed in this Second World War. Granddad, Dad's dad, fretted over and managed the movement of supplies in the Persian command, helping to equip our Russian allies. It's not often you get to say that phrase, Russian allies, but there you go. Grandpa, Mom's dad, rarely would even talk about what he saw. But by the time I knew him, as an old, frail man with thick glasses and a walker that he clung to lest his Parkinson's-induced shaking throw him to the floor, he was ready to write his story down. He typed it out, clunkily. But in those pages, I met a young, vibrant, dark-haired kid. A young man who worried about his widowed mother and little brothers back home, who received a Bronze Star for exposing himself to enemy fire to save his wounded brothers in arms. A young man soon to be haunted by days when more than half of those who woke up beside him in the morning weren't breathing by sundown. A young man who had the face of a wounded, blue-eyed, blonde-haired German soldier burned into his memory after refusing to shoot this youth left on the battlefield. He would forever wonder his entire life if that German lived. And yes, this young American came home. It's the only reason I'm talking to you today. But he was forever changed. None of this happened at Normandy. Yet, when I walked through its American cemetery for the first time, Grandpa's stories made those graves real. I didn't see mere tombstones. I saw sons, husbands, fathers who never went home, including a father and son whose graves lie next to each other in that cemetery. Now, I don't mean to suggest you have to have a World War II veteran or any vet, for that matter, in the family tree to appreciate France and America's kinship, D-Day or Les Braves. But the nation's shared values of representative government and liberty, if we can put a face, if we can feel those stories, it means so much more. So I'll thank you for indulging my own familial connection to this devastating war, and simply suggest that we all strive to keep in mind the personal, irreversible lifeblood sacrifices made not just by the Allies, but by every individual who charged that beach. Even if they lived, they were never the same. Their families were never the same. After personalizing and highlighting the cost of D-Day, and frankly, the cost of striving for more than 2 centuries to create 2 nations with shared principles, be they expressed as all men are created equal or as liberty, equality, brotherhood, perhaps we might ask, is such sacrifice worth it? I leave you to ponder that for yourself, but as I gaze upon Les Braves and see you get up close, that ghostly silhouette, I can think of but one answer. Lafayette, nous sommes ici toujours. Lafayette, we are here always.
What, no fanfare for me? Thank you, Professor Jackson. Great comments. Thank you. Next, I'd like to introduce the immensely talented Anilore Banon, the creator of Le Brave II at Water's Edge that we are dedicating today. She currently lives in Paris and studied in Paris, as well as lived in the United States and in Italy. In 2004, she created the original Le Brave on Omaha Beach, as I said earlier, to dedicate the 60th anniversary of D-Day. She was commissioned by the War Memorial in 2019 to create this for all of us to enjoy and reflect upon. She is also a future-oriented artist currently working on an unprecedented art and science project. She plans to send a sculpture engraved with 1 million handprints to the moon as a symbol of united humanity, the Vitae Project. Please give a warm Southeast Michigan and Grosse Pointe Farms welcome to Anilore Banon.
Oh my God. This is not easy after that. After your speech, I mean, really, after meeting the veterans earlier, the World War II veterans, I mean, normally I don't read, but today with all this emotion, it's impossible not to do, so forgive me, but I don't have any alternative to that. And really, the first thing I want to tell you is my profound emotion to be here, to share this very, very unique moment with you, and to have the brave behind us to do so. For me, first of all, I wanted to thank for the warmth and kindness of everybody that welcomed here since I arrived 2 days ago. And meeting the board, that was really a very special moment in this wonderful ballroom, and meeting Fred and Veronica. That was really an amazing moment, this fireworks yesterday. And we will have a series of events, and we don't know how we can top that. Really, thank you. Thank you, thank you, Maria, for from the beginning, for all your kindness, for your elegance. You always have a smile, and I know that everything looks easy, but I know it's not at all. But you know, it doesn't show. So thank you, and I wish you the best for the future here. And so maybe I should tell you the genesis of the origin, why I came up to do the Brave in Normandy. It started almost now, I didn't realize, but it's almost 20 years ago. And at the time, this first brushstroke that drew the first line of the Brave came for a reason. Like all of us, I'm sure, you got this feeling that the world was changing. Everything became a bit more chaotic. Not that we didn't have it before, and of course not. But it seemed that the whole world was feeling those things at the same time. And with those events, some dramatic events, with internet coming, and the fact that we all get closer, but at the same time, we all feel a bit more individualist. We have this feeling that the people get on themselves more and more, and there is less sharing, and maybe a bit more of selfishness coming up. And I thought that the years to come will need a lot of courage, a lot of bravery for what is coming. And I had this feeling that for the generation around me and the younger generation, courage was something from the past, something, that is part of history, almost outdated in a way. And I said, oh my God, they need to know what it is because they have to use it. So that's really why I started thinking about doing a monument to all these brave men that brought us freedom in France and to the world. So thinking about that, I thought the best place that would talk right away in a very universal way to everybody about bravery was Omaha Beach. And so I started to speak with all of the institution there to try to put that sculpture not in a museum where, of course, it would have sense, but you know what you expect when you go to a museum. But if you walk on a beach and you may be 10, 12, 14, you're just on this beach in a very beautiful day, and then you get into a big piece of metal. And then you wonder, you say, but what is this? And what is this, is this questioning, this surprise, is what I think was really essential to just pass on history, memory, and especially the sense of courage that we're trying to share here. And so that's why we fought a lot, because the French people, we have some qualities, but we have also our defects, and I know some of you know about that. So, but we get everything very complicated. We have this talent. So when you say you want to put 17 tons on a beach with the tides and very high tides, then they start to think you're crazy, and that's really, you should find another place. So then, they gave me so many authorizations you needed to do that. I don't even want to cite them because it's really boring. But then for me, it was only one blessing, one authorization that really was essential to me, was the one from the veterans. So I went to see the veterans. At the time, we had many of them, and the big red one that landed on this very beach. And I asked them, because I said, listen, this is what I would really like to do, but I would understand if it's to you a sacred place and that you'd rather have nothing. Of course, I wouldn't have done anything. But they were all, unanimous and enthusiastic. And they says, listen, our life remain here forever. So that's why we come back every year, and they do, in Omaha and everywhere. But, and so our life is here, our friends are still here, and there is nothing. So just go and do it. So with that, and some tears, of course, I started fight all the people that say, you cannot do it. And so we did, it was impossible not to do that after what they asked me to do in a way. So the thing that is interesting about having the Brave there is that it has the tides. Once I hope that some of you also will go and visit Omaha, and we'll see that the tide crossed the sculpture, because part of the elements were really a big part of what happened that day. You cannot do without. And so I was really happy when finally we could install the sculpture and in the same condition that was originally thought. So maybe now I want to tell you about the sculpture itself. Why those shapes? Why is it in three parts? So I think it was important because not to have us to symbolize what happened just with one piece, but it's so many things where they're together to make this happen. It just didn't happen like that. So I thought it needed several pieces, and let me tell you about each of them. So the centerpiece here, it's called Rise Freedom, so that the example of those who rose against barbarism helps us remain standing up against all forms of inhumanity. And on this part you have the wings of hope, so that the spirit that carried these men on June 6th continues to inspire us, reminding us that together it is always possible to change the future. And we're going to need that too. And the wings of fraternity, so that this surge of brotherhood always reminds us of our responsibility toward others as well as ourselves. And this shape, you see, you can see in the center that I wanted to have this piece coming from the sand and coming up and raised from honor and freedom here that was brought back to us and to the world. And on the right and left, because it didn't happen alone, I wanted to show the shape of those wings, which is hope also, but they also are sails that brings us that freedom. So my intention, and this has come to where we are today, and from the beginning my intention was to create a link between Omaha and the brave in Omaha and the other part of the Atlantic. All my work is always geared towards making connections, bringing humanity together. And so we tried to find several places, but nothing really was the right place. And so I thought, because I believe very much in synchronicity, that the right place and the right time will come, you know. And it did. The right time and place came by mail. And so Charles here, with whom we had several conversations, wrote me a letter, and then he had a vision. He was just coming back from Omaha, and so we had this wonderful talk right away. Maybe he had the vision, but I think we were also two artists talking to each other about that. And right away I saw it was the right place and the right time. And so we started. The COVID came in the middle, but that didn't stop us, of course, you know, we couldn't do that. So thank you, Charles, for this vision, and I hope you're happy that it came through. Thank you. In fact, with Charles, we announced it because every year there is an important peace forum in France called the Normandy Peace Forum, very near the Brave. And so we announced a duplex with Charles, which I think it was 3 a.m. for you, Charles, something like that. But, you know, I said, don't you mind? I mean, not, absolutely nothing. So perfectly. So we had this, and we were very proud also in France to create this link while the Brave were being manufactured. So we start the story there. And this is also very important to me because loyalty with my team is very important to create things. You never do things to just yourself, as you can see here. I mean, you need a lot of people, and you need to have a special bonding with them. And so to do the Brave 2, we keep the same team like the one 20 years ago. You know, the same engineers that did the structure plans, and the same workers in the plant, which is a shipyard in Normandy. And so they follow this from there, and they're also very proud to have participated to that. So we'll send them a note all together at one point. And so I'm also and I really wanted to tell you that I'm very impressed with the team here. We really create new links between France and America, and between Cherbourg and Paris and Grosse Pointe and the War Memorial, because those two teams were working together, dedicated problems were not problem anymore, we'll find a solution. And we did, and some problem, of course, happened. I mean, it's only when you don't do anything that you don't have problems. But when you do, at one point it comes up, and what's great is to see how you can solve them. So we did, and thank you very much to all the team, Wesley, Adam. I mean, they're all here. Rossetti, you've been wonderful, and it was great working with you. So I really want to tell you that for me, the meaning of sculpting is really to engrave in people's heart the spirit of infinite hope. And this was I'm trying to do all the time in all my work. And I hope that this sculpture will convey that feeling to this community that I'm starting to love very much. And now there is a little event that we're going to do now. I mean, something a bit special, because in my luggage that, don't laugh, I lost, of course, when I arrived here, but that's, there's something, I lose everything. I mean, not the more important, but I lose a lot of objects, and but I find everything back. So maybe this is because it makes nice stories. Maybe that's why. So in my luggage, I had the sand from Omaha that I collected before I came here. So that's why I was so upset. I was telling the customer, I said, I cannot lose my luggage. There is the sand from Omaha. You don't understand. It's not just the clothes. So we did. And so I really, please, I would love to do that, and to have this symbolism of pouring some of that sand that is so special to the sand here in Grosse Pointe. And Mary and Ron, would you be, when you were so much involved with it, would you do that with me? Thank you again for your warmth. Thank you for your warmth.
Thank you, Anilore. We are honored to have with us today Sergeant First Class Northman, a bugler with the United States Army Band Pershing Zone. He was born in Mount Clemens, Michigan, and joined the Army Band in 2012. As a bugler, he has performed taps over 10,000 times for ceremonies in Arlington National Cemetery and in Washington, D.C. Ladies and gentlemen, please stand as you are able. Join us for a moment of silence, followed by the playing of taps.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. What a beautiful evening. We are the United States Army Herald Trumpets, and it is our sincere pleasure to be here with you today. On behalf of our leader and commander, Colonel Bruce R. Pulver, we welcome you to this special presentation of the United States Army Herald Trumpets. That was Liberty Fanfare, written by John Williams. Thank you. To commemorate the Statue of Liberty's centennial anniversary on July 4th, 1986. Before we continue, I would like to introduce our conductor, the Executive Officer of the United States Army Band Pershing Zone, and the Director of the Herald Trumpets, Major Aaron Morris. And I am Staff Sergeant Paige Fremder, your announcer for this evening. Since 1922, when General John J. Blackjack Pershing gave the order to organize and equip the Army Band, the men and women of Pershing Zone have been entertaining audiences and providing support for the Military District of Washington. The performing elements of Pershing Zone carry out well over 5,000 missions annually. These missions cover a wide variety of performances, which include public engagement, educational outreach, support to Arlington National Cemetery, and a multitude of official ceremonies in Washington, D.C. Our next selection was written for the inauguration of President Ronald Reagan. Here is Salute to a New Beginning. Officially founded in 1959, the Herald Trumpets were formed to add splendor to official military ceremonies. Patterned after traditional British fanfare trumpet ensembles, the group now serves as the official fanfare ensemble to the President of the United States and can often be seen lining the south portico of the White House as the President welcomes foreign ambassadors, royalty, and visiting heads of state. One of the most visible and vibrant ceremonies in diplomatic Washington is the arrival of a visiting head of state at the White House. In a colorful display of military pageantry, a large assembly of troops from all 5 branches of the armed forces is arranged on the South Lawn. As the President and First Lady step out of the White House, the Herald Trumpets, positioned on the balcony above them, perform the presidential honors. At the conclusion of the ceremony, the President, First Lady, and visiting dignitaries walk the steps to the south balcony, position themselves right in the middle of the Herald Trumpets, and wave to the crowd on the White House lawn as the presidential processional is played. Next, we will feature a composition by our own staff arranger, Sergeant First Class Sarah Corey. Journey Home was written for the centennial anniversary of the Tomb of the Unknown Soldier. The Tomb of the Unknown is located at the center of Arlington National Cemetery and positioned on a hilltop that overlooks all of Washington, D.C. This piece was written with the intention of honoring the service, sacrifice, and mourning associated with Arlington Cemetery and the Tomb of the Unknown. The men and women of the Herald Trumpets are first and foremost members of the United States Army Ceremonial Band. The primary mission of the Ceremonial Band is to honor the soldiers and their family members laid to rest in Arlington National Cemetery. The soldiers before you have performed countless full-honor funeral ceremonies in all elements, the heat, the rain, and the snow. This sacred mission is near and dear to our hearts. We take great pride in the collective opportunity to honor the service and sacrifice of our fellow soldiers as they reach their final resting place. Here is Journey Home. Our featured soloists were Sergeant First Class Kevin Maloney on trumpet and Staff Sergeant Mike Dillman on the drums. For more information about the Herald Trumpets and the US Army Band, please visit us at usarmyband.com, where you'll find all of our upcoming performances, some of which are streaming, as well as a link to our YouTube channel, where you can find hundreds of archived performances by all 7 of our performing elements. We're also on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, Discord, all with the Army, with the handle US Army Band. So basically, pick your favorite platform and please stay in touch with us. Our next selection, titled Starship Troopers, was written by Lieutenant Colonel James McKenzie in memory of Lieutenant Colonel Derek Shaw, who led the Herald Trumpets for over 6 years. This is Starship Troopers. As this distinguished ensemble gained recognition throughout the world, we have been called on to perform for official ceremonies, concerts, and events of national and international significance, much like today. We will close our performance with two of our most recognizable fanfares. The first of these, by Leo Arnault, was introduced at the 1968 Winter Olympic Games in France, and our final selection, written for the Herald Trumpets by famed composer John Williams, was premiered at the 1984 Summer Olympic Games in Los Angeles, conducted by Maestro John Williams himself. Please enjoy Bugler's Dream and Olympic Fanfare.